Hey, everybody. What's up? What's up? It's Dr. Nicole here. So, this is the first video in a series that I'm doing all around feminine energy and feminine communication in your relationships. And I'm going to tell you why I get a lot of questions. And this one video is addressing a specific question that I got in my DM. And it was about a woman saying, how do I increase my feminine energy when my partner is not in his masculine? And I'm feeling resentful. I'm not able to get him to do things and so on and so forth. I think a lot of women can relate to this because I hear this all the time. Like, well, how am I expected to be more in my feminine, more in my soft side if my partner doesn't seem willing to do his part, right? And so I always focus, as you know, for women on controlling what you can control, which is yourself. And when you become that which you want to embody, which you feel is good for you, you will pull out, you will attract that what you need in your partner or in a potential partner, right? But I want to talk in this video about four aspects of feminine communication. Because for me, communication is one of the most powerful and like real concrete tangible ways that we are able to express and embody our femininity and our feminine energy. And I'm not just talking about talking in a soft voice. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the skills. It's almost like feminine energy communication is about having a high level of an emotional intelligence where you're in touch with yourself and where you can be in touch with the person that you're in relationship with, right? And so I want to talk about four feminine energy communication tips which help you to embody that femininity, and they also help you to draw out or attract. I'm not talking about you doing all the work, but attract um, that which you want and need, which is, from this person who wrote the message, more of the masculine energy, more of the will to do and to protect and to be um, a presence. If you want that from your partner, you got to start first with feminine communication tips, right? So I'm going to give you four tips. All right. Number one is focusing on how you feel when you communicate, not just sharing information. This happens with a lot of women. We feel that we've been told, like in more recent more recent decades, that we are the better communicators. We talk, we articulate, right? And even in media and other places, they have cast men as inadequate and poor communicators. And I will say that that stereotype is not only not good for men, but it's also not good for women because it makes you feel like the way you're communicating is better, right? And I say you have to learn to communicate differently, particularly when it comes to building more connection in your relationship. And that is to focus more on how you're feeling, expressing the feelings versus just sharing information. So, for example, there's two ways to share when you reconnect with your partner at the end of the day. I hear women say, oh, when my husband comes home, I'm telling him, I want to tell him how my day was, but I can't necessarily, he's not listening, he's not paying attention. So, one of the things that you have to do is focus not just on sharing information, but on sharing how you feel. The difference is this: information is your partner says, honey, how was your day? Oh, well, this happened. My boss did this. I went to a coworker. I had to drive here. I had to do this. You're giving facts and information versus leading with what is the emotion? What is the emotion of the day for you? Was it a fulfilling day? Was it an annoying day? Were you feeling defeated? Were you feeling upset? Right? It's all about leading first with the feeling. That draws out the sense of wanting to connect, wanting to lean in. Men tend to be problem solvers, so they want to understand what you're feeling, to understand also what is it that you might need from them. Is it just a place to vent and listen? Is it a suggestion? Is it a hug, right? But first is starting with that emotion and that feeling. So I want you to think about ways that you can practice that, not just this is X, Y, and Z happen. Even when I coach women who are trying to say, I'm trying to get my spouse to do something, and they're listing out a whole, they're overloading with information. Do this, they're given a bunch of details, they're given orders, do this is how it goes, right? And it's as if you're talking to a child because you feel like you have to overload with information. But none of us processes information in that way, right? We process first and foremost through the emotion that is being shared and expressed, and then that helps us to understand which way to go, right? What the person is trying to communicate. So that's tip number one. Learn to focus on how you feel when you're communicating, and communicating that emotion versus just sharing information. The other things, tip number two, is learn, as people are saying now, learn to read the room, right? I love that phrase. I always say that. But a lot of people don't know how to read the room. You have to learn to read the nonverbal cues, not just listen for the words. The nonverbal cues would be things like tone of voice. Are you tuned to tone of voice? When does your partner seem more present versus tuned out? Does your partner look like they're feeling uncomfortable, right? And being okay with asking about that, not confronting, but asking about that. Being okay with holding off, giving space, right? Being okay with checking in with yourself in terms of what you're saying. Is it triggering, or so on and so forth? But using the nonverbal communication to be able to, that's another form. That's also another form of communication that you want to look at, okay? So, not just the words, but the body language, the gestures, the tone of voice, the eye contact, all of those things are really, really important. And you want to use that as a way. Sometimes your partner will signal with body language or with tone of voice or eye contact or lack thereof, whether or not they're willing to engage in the discussion right now. And if you feel like your partner is looking like they're not engaging, you can simply ask, right? But there's two ways to ask. One is, are you listening? The other is, oh, is this a good time? Right? It seems like you're a little distracted. Let me know. I really want to share this with you. Let me know if this is a good time. If it's not, it's okay, right? You want to allow an opening so that your partner willingly engages in the discussion. But you first have to notice those nonverbals, okay? The third thing is to understand that barriers are not the same as boundaries. I am the boundaries queen, right? My platform is Boundaries to Bliss. I am all for boundaries. I'm all for not engaging in things in an unintentional way to where you get resentful, you get overwhelmed, and you feel guilty, you feel all of these things. But a lot of us go to the other extreme. We go from not having had boundaries to then putting up barriers. A boundary is just a line, a separation that helps, it gives shape to the relationship. It helps a person know where they should stop, right? A wall is literally, a barrier is literally a wall. And it says, it's like, do not enter, do not pass go, right? Do not come. It's like the X, and what that does is that shuts down any and all communication, right? And sometimes we put up barriers without knowing it. We put up barriers by, again, not leaning into the emotional vulnerability to help connect us to our partner, us not trusting ourselves or our partners to be more emotionally vulnerable. It manifests as through tone of voice. There's a tone of voice that says, hey, don't go there with me, right? And sometimes that boundary is important, but sometimes you have to ask yourself, are you putting up a necessary boundary so that you all have a better understanding of what's acceptable, of like the parameters of your communication? Or are you putting up a wall that says, do not cross, and I don't care, what it is, do not enter? And you cannot expect to have emotional connection or intimacy if you're putting up that wall. All right. So, barriers, you have to know the difference between barriers and boundaries. Boundaries are healthy. Boundaries should not be overly rigid, especially in our relationships. Boundaries should be something that we negotiate, they're dynamic. But barriers are rigid and they're like, no, it's a no go zone. Okay. The fourth thing is learning how not to lean on the silent treatment as a way to express anger. And this happens a lot for women because we have often been told that our anger is not acceptable. We have not felt permission to feel or express anger in healthy ways. We have never been taught how to express anger in healthy ways, which is why some of us have poor boundaries and we get resentful, and then it's hard for us to communicate that. So, so we have leaned on the silent treatment. The way that we feel is more acceptable to express anger or to express boundaries, even, is through that passive aggressive silent treatment. And the silent treatment is one of the most dangerous things in relationships. It's actually stonewalling, is what it's called, is one of the predictors through research of divorce. If you all are constantly as a couple engaging in stonewalling, and that a form of that is the silent treatment. So you have to have the courage. There's three C's, right? You have to have the courage, you have to have the commitment, and you have to have a sense of compassion in your communication. But you have to first and foremost have the courage to say what's uncomfortable, to check in with yourself and then say what's uncomfortable. Sometimes a really uncomfortable conversation or expression from you need to have that with your partner. But resorting to the silent treatment to do that makes it really, really hard because and that's a way of avoiding, that's a way of expressing extreme anger and resentment, and then avoiding the conversations that can help um, take it, to help like break that resentment. Difficult conversations are difficult, but they're the bridge to getting to the other side. All right. And so if you feel like your man, your partner is not in his masculine energy, as the person who wrote to me said, one of the best tools or best ways to really your look at sort of how you're leaning into your feminine energy is looking at your communication and asking yourself, are you really leaning into these four forms of feminine energy communication? Again, one, focusing on how you feel, not just giving information. Two, really learning to read nonverbal cues, not just the words. Three, understanding the difference between boundaries and barriers and staying clear of those barriers, right? And four, refraining from using the silent treatment to express anger, finding healthier ways to to communicate your anger. Okay, so tell me what you think, and this is going to be a whole series on feminine energy, femininity in your relationship, healthy boundaries that go together, and communication, feminine communication. All right, take care, guys. See you in the next video.